What's going on, everyone? Gill Gross here. Monday Match Analysis will return in full next week. This week, I'm just doing a couple of short videos on some quick topics. Someone asked me on Twitter that they wanted to know my thoughts on this article written by Peter Bodo, for ESPN. And I don't know how well you can even read this, but I'll basically just summarize it myself. Basically, the article discusses the GOAT debate. And it makes the claim that the number of Grand Slams are completely skewed. Now, I've heard this argument before with our current cast of characters, that because there are two hard courts and anyway, I'm not going to really get into it, but sometimes people say, well, it's not fair because there's two majors on hard court and only one on clay and one on grass, and that's not even. That's not fair. So there's that argument that I've heard before. Now, I've never heard this argument, and there are two main arguments. One, and this is very important, players used to largely skip the Australian Open. So it used to be your John McEnroes and your Bjorn Borgs of the world, your Jimmy Connors of the world. They would not play the Australian Open. In fact, Roy Emerson, who had the lead before Pete Sampras got 14, Roy Emerson had 12 Grand Slam titles, and that was the record, and 6 of them were Australian Opens. So a lot of people were like, Roy Emerson, he just has it because he played all those Australian Opens. And then people started playing the Australian Open, and everything changed. Yeah, that's very important to think about. I mean that's a big deal. And if you're going to play 4 instead of 3, that's enormous. The other argument, and I'd say the bulk of the article, because this is a more complex argument, discusses the fact that all of the surfaces have become closer together in the way they play. That grass used to be faster, clay used to be slower, hard court was still hard court, but that's why you saw all of these clay court specialists winning on clay, and then you saw a lot of people who could win on grass. They couldn't win on any of the other surfaces. The argument is that now the surfaces have become so similar that the same players can dominate all the surfaces, that it's a lot easier to be a player who's successful on all surfaces. And that that suggestion is decent. I get where Peter Bodo is coming from. There are clear arguments against it, such as, well, how come Rafa Nadal is able to still dominate the French if clay became so much more similar to hard courts and grass courts? Basically, if clay got so much faster, well, I'm seeing the same results here. It's just that Nadal is so great on this surface that I don't know if that argument applies for clay courts. For grass courts, maybe. Now, Roger Federer still has a slew of them, and Rafa Nadal, I mean, he's got 2 Wimbledons, right? I don't know if this is a great argument. Now, it makes a lot of sense conceptually, so I won't get into the nitty-gritty. So let's say it's true. Let's say this argument, the surfaces got closer together, and that's why we've had 3 players in the same era amass this unbelievable number of slams. Let's say that's true. Well, Bodo, at the end of this article, didn't actually make a claim. He didn't actually take that information and draw a conclusion from it. He just said, well, maybe there is no GOAT then. Maybe there's a bunch of GOATs. It's a cop-out. So to me, this person who tweeted at me, at Gill Gross, 2 L's with an underscore, this person who tweeted at me wanted to know my opinion on this article. It's tough to deliver an opinion. I agree, I don't agree, because the article is fairly weak in its actual position. I have no problem, however, considering, and look, I like to sort of defer to someone like Steve Flink, who's actually watched all of these players play, and I haven't. I'm too young. So I will preface it with that. However, I don't have a problem with considering Roger Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, the 3 greatest players who have ever played, because based on their two things, their fitness and the racket technology, they would smoke any of the players who were trying to kind of hold up to their level, or that Peter Bodo was trying to hold up to their level in this article. You could say it's unfair. What can McEnroe and Borg do about technology changes and nutritional changes? They can't do anything. But to me, you can't really compare eras. But you can't compare eras until the technology stops changing. That's the reality of it. Once the technology stops changing, then you can compare eras. So this is true like in all sports, and eventually the technology will begin to become more constant. But all sports grapple with this. In baseball, you have the steroid era. In basketball, you had Wilt Chamberlain playing guys who just were way shorter. It was before basketball was big enough where Wilt Chamberlain was dominating and putting up numbers that no one has replicated since, but people are like, well, you didn't have any competition. In basketball, the rules have changed, so who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Well, they changed the rules, so who knows? There used to be no three-point line. There used to be hand checking was allowed. There used to be more physicality in the sport of basketball. So I don't know if these analogies mean anything or not to you guys, but it's very hard to compare eras. It always will be. But the eras get stronger and stronger. So is it completely unfair to say that Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic are the greatest of all time because they all would have beaten Pete Sampras? I'm pretty confident in saying they all would have had positive head-to-head records on Pete Sampras, with the exception of, I don't even know if there is an exception. With the speed that Pete Sampras played on grass courts, when grass courts were a little bit faster, I'm sure Rafa would have had a lot of trouble with that. Other than that, I don't know. Um, they all like I would have favored Nadal on a hard court against Pete Sampras. I don't know about you guys, but tennis is getting better and better, stronger and stronger. That's the reality of it. Does that mean we shouldn't does that mean we should just throw up our arms and say, "Oh, they're all equal. There's a bunch of goats"? I don't think so. I don't think there's anything wrong with having recency bias in this case, because it is true that the sport has evolved and players have gotten greater and greater and greater and greater. Work ethic, nutrition, fitness, racket technology, analytics, tactics, everything's better now. I'm sure you guys will have thoughts. Throw them in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.